Hi everyone, today I'm sowing Snapdragons and I'm sowing 12 different varieties, and a lot of these I'm sowing because we're going to be celebrating my son and daughter-in-law's wedding in our garden this summer in July, and we've chosen these particular colours because we think they'll add to a wonderful floral display. I've also decided that it's way too cold to sow seeds outside. I've got gloves on but my fingers are freezing and I can't take them off, but I can't sow seeds with gloves on. So we're going to pop inside. If you're new to my channel, my name's Annette and this is Cottoverdi, and welcome to all my new subscribers. So many people joining this channel. Thank you so much. It means the world to me and I love having you all along. Let's pop inside and talk about Snapdragons. So we're inside now in the kitchen. I don't have a greenhouse, so if I need to be warm I have to come indoors. So it's a little bit echoey, apologies. This is my amaryllis called Lemon Star, and this is my first set of blooms. So I've got two on this one, and Lemon Stars, it kind of is lemony, but it's more sort of green in real life, kind of pale green. I think it's beautiful, absolutely stunning, and I thought I'd show you this one. Anyway, let's get on with sowing the Snapdragons. So if you're new to my channel, you may not know that last year I did an entire video about Snapdragons where I was comparing one Snapdragon against the other. So sort of comparing colours, not really heights, and not necessarily form, but I was comparing the colours. So for instance, the reds against the royal and just all the blushes together. And if you're interested in taking a look at that, because I was trying to decide which ones I like the most. So if you're interested in taking a look at that, I'll put a link in the description below, but you could also just find it on my channel, but there'll be a link in the description below. That being said, this year, as I said earlier in the video, I've chosen these particular Snapdragons because I want them to be flowering for the middle of July, and I've chosen particular colours that I've agreed with my daughter-in-law and my son. These are the colours they want, so they sort of want all the blushes, but they also want pops of colour as well, which I think is going to be absolutely beautiful. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about Snapdragons themselves, then I'm going to tell you which varieties I'm going to sow, and I'm going to put pictures up on the screen or videos of what they look like in my garden with the names, so you can see what they're going to look like if I've grown them before, and then I'll show you how I sow them and give you information about how best to sow them and how to look after them. So to start off with, you're probably wondering how I'm planning to have these flowers at the exact moment that I need them for this wedding celebration. Well, there's no guarantee because nature, but Snapdragons breeders put the Snapdragons in 4 groups: group 1, 2, 3 and 4. It's as simple as that. Group 1 are mainly sort of wintry flowering, they like the cold. Group 2 are spring flowering and they like the cooler weather. Group 3 summer flowering, and group 4 are late summer flowering. Now a lot of breeders put them, they'll say a particular variety is group 1 and 2 or group 3 and 4 because it's sort of that zone. But the other thing to know about Snapdragons is they take between 110 and 120 days to get from sowing the seed to when you'll have flowers in your garden. So 120 days from today is about the 5th of June, I think. Today's the 5th of February. So I should start having flowers from these Snapdragons, if they all germinate. I should start having flowers from the 5th of June. Now, that's not a guarantee, but that's pretty normal, pretty average. And your Snapdragons, they should germinate in 7 to 14 days if you keep them at 20 to 24 degrees. So I will put mine on the heat mats in my seed starting room, which I will show you. I'll take you through to that when I've sown all the Snapdragons. Now, the other thing I should mention about Snapdragons is that they are geotrophic, which means they will bend towards gravity, but they're also phototropic. So geotropic and phototrophic? Anyway, I'll put it up on the screen, but geotrophic, they bend towards gravity. Phototropic means they bend towards the light. So you'll often see if Snapdragons haven't been staked, which I never do in my garden, so this often happens to me, you will have Snapdragons with a kink in them. And I quite like the kink because if you want like a nice spreading floral arrangement, then you could put these Snapdragons at the side, at the edges, and it just makes it look I don't know, interesting and gives movement to the arrangement. I don't want all my Snapdragons to have kinks in them, but they will sort of topple over with the weight of the flowers on top. The best time to pick your Snapdragons for the best floral display is when the bottom third has opened up into flowers and the top third is still sort of closed. And then if you pick them then, they'll be really long lasting for you in arrangements. But a lot of us are just growing Snapdragons because we like them in the garden. Now you can sow your Snapdragons in the autumn, but I missed that boat. I had other things going on. So the best time to sow your Snapdragons, if you're sowing them at this time of year, is 10 weeks before your last frost date. Now somebody asked me in one of the comments on another video how to know when your last frost date is, but if you just Google it. Just go on the internet and you should be able to find out when your average last frost date is for where you're living. There is a particular website, I can't remember what it's called, that sort of covers the whole of the UK, but I think it also covers the US. So most people can find out, everybody should be able to find out when their average last frost date and even when their average first frost date is. But Snapdragons can be planted out before your average last frost date because they can tolerate some frost. In fact, some people leave their Snapdragons in the ground and don't, cut them back or take them out. They treat them as perennials rather than annuals. I've always found when I've done that the Snapdragons don't come back as strong, they're not as tall and they're prone to rust, but they do come back. So I don't advise that, but I know a lot of people do it, and it probably depends where you live and where they're planted and how much you look after them. So I don't do that. I sow mine as annuals every year. I really enjoy doing that. I like choosing different varieties. So that's what I do, but I will plant them out probably before my last average frost, which is towards the end of April. That's probably when I'll get them in the ground. I think that's all I need to mention. When we're sowing the seeds, I'll show you, but surface sow them because they need light to germinate. But you could put a thin layer of vermiculite over the top to help retain moisture in the compost, because these tiny Snapdragon seeds need good contact and moisture in order to germinate, and vermiculite really does help with that. I know a lot of people don't like using it. I wouldn't advise sprinkling more compost on top because they do need light to germinate. So just if you don't want to use vermiculite or don't have it, then just make sure they've got good contact with the soil and keep spritzing them with water to make sure they're moist. I'm going to go through the different varieties I'm sowing today now. I'll put a picture and the name up on the screen, or a video if I've grown them in the garden before. I'll show you what they look like in the garden. So one of my absolute must-have favourites is Costa Silva. I'm definitely sowing Costa Silva. It is the most beautiful pale pink colour. I love it, and because it's a Costa variety, it's going to be a group 2, so it will be earlier summer, earlier to flower. I'm also sowing Costa Summer Lavender, which is a group 3. Now I know it's a Costa, but it's a Costa Summer, which that basically it's going to be slightly later to flower. I mean, don't get too fussed about it, but basically I'm hedging my bets. So I want a lavender colour, but I want to make sure that I definitely got some flowers. So whilst also sowing another different type of lavender, I'm sowing the Costa Summer Lavender in the hope that I've got the lavender colour. Then we get on to the Potomacs that I've chosen, and I think I'm sowing 4 different varieties of Potomac. The Potomac are a group 3, and so they should definitely be flowering in the summer. I'm sowing Potomac Royal, which is the most beautiful fuchsia colour. I fell in love with this last year all over again. I had it planted with a mini Snapdragon and it was just spectacular. It's the most gorgeous velvety fuchsia colour. It's a wonderful purple. I'm also sowing Potomac Ivory White. I'm not sure why it's called Ivory White, but my packet says Ivory White. It's basically an ivory. And I'm sowing Potomac Lavender, which is one of my all-time favourites. It's such a soft, gentle lavender colour. In all honesty, I find the word lavender really confusing because when I grow lavender, the plant itself is very blue, but people tend to refer to the lavender colour. It's more of a purpley colour. So Potomac Lavender definitely is more purple than blue. It's definitely not lavender in my opinion, but it's called lavender. And I'm sowing Potomac Dark Orange, which is one of the sort of bursts of colour that my daughter-in-law really liked. I think it will be gorgeous, sort of Actually just a really interesting orangey colour with different hues of sort of different ranges of orange with a bit of yellow in it, and it really is a lovely warm shade. I'm also sewing Avignon Pink, which is a group 2. Now, I haven't sewn Avignon Pink before, but I'm really hoping that this will be another sort of guarantee of flowers in case the Potomacs aren't flowering in time. Then I'm sewing some Madame Butterflies. Now, the Madame Butterflies are also known as the azalea flowered Snapdragons because they've just got this really sort of fluffy centre. The best thing about them from a floral point of view is that because they've got more petals, it's harder for the pollinators to pollinate them. Now, I'm not advocating that we don't want pollinators, we do, but it's good to have a variety in your garden. But because it's harder for the pollinators to pollinate them, the flowers should last longer. Madame Butterflies are also a group 3, so they'll be slightly later flowering. So I'm sewing Madame Butterfly Pink, and I'm sewing Madame Butterfly Red. I'm also sewing Madame Butterfly Cherry Bronze. Now, my packet says watermelon, but if you saw my video that I made last year comparing them, I compared Cherry Bronze to watermelon, which I can't find anywhere else on the internet apart from this one person that I bought these seeds from. They're exactly the same. So I am calling it Cherry Bronze because that's what it is, even though my seed packet says watermelon. But it's just a beautiful colour. I think Madame Butterfly Cherry Bronze is popular for all the right reasons. It's a beautiful colour. Then we get onto the minis. I fell in love with the minis last year. They're just really good plants to have at the front of the border. They're so pretty and just such a gorgeous shade of colour. They'd look really nice in patio pots, so I may well put them in containers this year. So I'm sewing Madame Butterfly. I'm sewing Mini Butterfly Blush, which is the softest, most beautiful colour. And I had this planted with the Potomac Royal last year and it looked stunning, and a dahlia called Maya. I'm also sewing Mini Butterfly Sunset. I haven't grown this one before, but the colours look really pretty. So those are the 12 Snapdragons I'm sewing. Now I'm going to show you how I sew them, and then I'll show you how I water them and take you through to the seed starting room. So Snapdragon seeds are really tiny. So I'm going to be sprinkling maybe 2 or 3, hopefully, into each cell. Germination rates on the packets vary, and some of my seeds are a year or 2 old, so I'm not going to individually try to sow one into each cell. If you want to just put one seed, tiny Snapdragon seed, into a cell, then a lot of people use a damp toothpick to just pick up one seed, and that works quite well. The other great thing about vermiculite that I really like is that when you're bottom watering, you can tell when the top of the surface is damp because the vermiculite changes colour. So this is a dry tray and these are the trays that have been watered, and there's a significant difference in colour. So we can tell that these are now saturated, and I can drain them and go and put them on my seed starting shelves. Starting all my seeds, and Whilst seeds are germinating, I always put a clear lid on top of them. You could use cling film, that also works, or any clear lid. I just happen to have these seed starting trays, so that's what I use. So these heat mats are on. Once everything's germinated, the heat mats are not on. So I just I don't bother to take the heat mat away. I rotate everything through the shelves. So I've just moved those over there. Also, I have lights on here, but I've turned them off because they flash, they flicker when I'm filming. So they're LED lights. I don't know how to fix that. So normally there are lights on, and I have a fan over there, a little fan that's also normally blowing, but I've turned it off because there's a little distant hum. I didn't want that to interfere with what I'm doing today. So everything's going to stay on the heat mats with the lids on top until they've germinated. Hopefully in the next week or 2 weeks. I normally find that my Snapdragons germinate within like 4 days. So that's what I'm kind of expecting to happen again this year, because I find that they germinate really fast. As soon as that happens, I will take them off the heat mats or turn the heat mat off and take the lids off. The other huge advantage with the seed cell trays that I use, because I'm just a home gardener, I don't need massive 40 cell trays or even 15 cell trays. I just sow 8 of everything. If I need more, then I'll just sow 2 lots. But the other huge advantage of having those little trays of 8, I find, is that if one variety germinates before another, then I can just take it out. Whereas if you're sowing sort of a big tray of 40 and some have germinated and some haven't, I'm always in a quandary as to, do I leave them on the heat? Do I take them off the heat? Do I leave the lid on? Do I take the lid off? So I just find it much easier for the small quantities that I'm growing of each variety just to have those little cell trays. If you're interested in them, they're easily available, and I'll put a link in the description below. So take a look at that if you would like to know what I'm using, but I really do like them. I find they've lasted for ages and they work really well for me. I think that's about it for today then. We have finished sowing the Snapdragons, and I cannot wait to see them all in bloom. I love Snapdragons. I hope you've had fun with me today and found this interesting and useful, and you've definitely got loads of time to sow Snapdragons if you'd like to have a go too. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.